we'll take a look at something that is of significance in South Australia with the Australian bat lyssavirus, which has been found in South Australia. And PIRSA has put out a warning about this. It is a potentially deadly virus. Now, it's not carried by all bats, but it is something that if you come into contact with bats or with the bats that have died, you do not touch or handle those bats. And there is a significant warning on this about the ABLV, and contact 1800 675 888 and avoid any contact with bats at the moment. Ricky Lambert joins me. That is a bit of a backdrop to some really interesting comments that have come out of the World Health Organization about the selling of things like bats in wet markets.
Thanks, Wayne. We've been looking at this controversy in China where the Chinese investigative report by the World Health Organization was stymied by China. They weren't able to go to the wet markets or even get full access to the records the Chinese government has about the spread of coronavirus. And we've spotted these comments from a representative of the World Health Organization. This is what Fadela Shaib, the WHO spokesperson from Geneva, Switzerland, had to say recently.
And it's also important to know that most emerging infectious diseases have their origin in wild animals. And suspending unsafe sale of live mammals for food will reduce the chances of a virus spillover in the future. This is not a new recommendation, but COVID-19 has brought new attention to this threat given the magnitude of its consequences.
So in effect, 70% of cases of infectious diseases arise in these wet markets. This is a stunning revelation, and given that the situation in Wuhan, where the World Health Organization was trying to track whether or not that was the origins, and given China's initial comments on it back 18 months ago when it first appeared, one would suggest that the World Health Organization has made this comment to the world for a reason.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there was 70% of cases it relates to the consumption of wild animals, not just in wet markets. But what they WHO have said in that video is that they want governments to shut down the selling of animals in these markets, which is going to be incredibly hard to achieve. Come back to that in a moment, perhaps. But what I think is really significant is that the WHO, through their own channels, are saying what they couldn't get out of China, which is that this is a problem. These live animal markets are a problem and they need to be shut down. So I think that they're saying very strongly that regardless of what China says, this is something that is a source of problems and potentially fatal pandemics around the globe.
Propaganda is something that comes then out of this situation, because Australia then said at its international level on trade, it said to China, we're not happy about the circumstances. We want an investigation into what happened in Wuhan and so on. China hit back at Australia, right? Suddenly we had bans on barley and wine and all sorts of other things that we trade. And now we're seeing this, the implications of this. The World Health Organization would seem to be supporting the view that the Australian government and other Western governments have put on the origins of the coronavirus.
Well, what we must never compromise on as Australia is the question of truth and where the truth lies. We can't let international trade and relations come in the way of what the truth actually is about the origins of these viruses. When you consider you've got a market in a third world country, in some cases, selling these live animals and then creating a pandemic that goes all over the world, and then we have to suffer lockdowns and restrictions and we can't fly to overseas, we can't see our own families, we have to spend millions if not billions of dollars on vaccination programs because one country can't regulate their live animal market sales. I think that's what should be discussed at the world scale, and I think that's what the WHO is trying to instigate, is a worldwide closure of these markets, as they say, as an emergency measure, so the rest of the world isn't spending billions, if not trillions of dollars, avoiding catching the pandemic that starts in those markets.
Yeah, it's a very good comment. Ricky Lambert joining us from our Flow News 24 team, and you can see articles on this topic at our webpage, flownews24.com.au. Very interesting times with Dan Tehan on the road at the moment as our Trade Minister, trying to sort out the balancing up of what is happening at a higher level with the propaganda wars coming out of China.